Welcome back to True Footballing Icons. This week we've celebrated 7 footballers who each left the game in their own unforgettable way. The intelligence of Teddy Sheringham, the determination of Ballack, the clinical brilliance of Andriy Shevchenko, the leadership of Sergio Ramos, the elegance of Pirès, the winning mentality of Eto'o, and the unforgettable genius of Gascoigne. 7 icons. 7 incredible stories. 1 unforgettable week of football history. So sit back, relax, and let's relive the careers of this week's true footballing icons. Football has always loved the spectacular, the fastest players, the biggest transfer fees, the brightest young stars. Teddy Sheringham wasn't any of those. He never became the world's most expensive striker. He never relied on blistering pace. He rarely arrived with the biggest headlines. Yet wherever he played, supporters quickly discovered something football kept overlooking. A player whose greatest strength was his mind. This is the story of football's smartest striker. Long before the trophies, before Wembley, before Old Trafford, before England, Teddy Sheringham was simply a young footballer trying to earn an opportunity. His journey didn't begin at one of England's biggest clubs. It began in non-league football with Leytonstone. There were no cameras, no headlines, no guarantees, only determination and belief. In 1984, Millwall signed him on a free transfer. Few could have imagined what would follow. Supporters quickly realized they had discovered something special. Sheringham wasn't the quickest. He wasn't the strongest. But he saw passes others never saw. He drifted into space before defenders realized the danger. He made football look simple, because he understood it better than almost anyone else. Goals followed. Promotion followed. And Millwall supporters watched a young striker grow into the heartbeat of their team. His performances earned a move to Nottingham Forest. The transfer fee? Around £1.65 million. Even then, football still underestimated him. Under the legendary Brian Clough, Sheringham continued to develop, learning from one of the greatest managers the game has ever known, adding composure, vision, leadership. The football brain that would define his career grew stronger every season. Then came Tottenham Hotspur, White Hart Lane, a bigger stage, a bigger challenge. Again, the transfer fee wasn't enormous, but Spurs supporters didn't care. They judged Teddy Sheringham on what really mattered. What he did every Saturday. Goals, assists, leadership, intelligence. He became the focal point of Tottenham's attack. Not because he could outrun defenders, but because he could outthink them. That became Teddy Sheringham's greatest gift. He was already seeing the next pass, while everyone else was still watching the first. His outstanding performances couldn't be ignored forever. England called. By Euro 1996, Teddy had become one of Terry Venable's most important players. The tournament produced unforgettable moments. Gazza's goal against Scotland, Shearer's finishing, the nation falling back in love with football. Yet quietly, Teddy Sheringham was pulling the strings. Nowhere was that clearer than against the Netherlands. England needed a performance. Sheringham delivered one of the finest displays of his international career. A goal, 2 assists, intelligent movement, perfect link-up play. England won 4-1. Supporters recognized his importance. Once again, he had made everyone around him better. The performances attracted the attention of England's biggest club, Manchester United. In 1997, Sir Alex Ferguson signed Teddy Sheringham to replace the retiring Eric Cantona. The reaction wasn't entirely positive. Many questioned the decision. Some critics claimed Sheringham was already too old. He was 31. They believed Manchester United had signed a player whose best years were behind him. Supporters were unsure. The critics had already made up their minds. Teddy Sheringham had heard it all before. And once again, he was about to prove them wrong. Manchester United wanted Teddy Sheringham. The rest of football wasn't so sure. In the summer of 1997, Sir Alex Ferguson made one of the biggest decisions of his career. Eric Cantona had retired. One of the greatest players in Manchester United's history had walked away from the game. His replacement? 31-year-old Teddy Sheringham. The headlines came almost immediately. Too old. United should have signed someone younger. He'll never replace Cantona. Before he'd even kicked a ball, many had already written him off. Sheringham understood the pressure. Replacing Eric Cantona wasn't just about scoring goals. It was about filling the boots of a footballing icon. Old Trafford expected excellence. Nothing less. Every mistake would be magnified. Every missed chance criticized. Yet Teddy Sheringham remained exactly as he always had. Calm. Intelligent. Patient. He trusted the qualities that had carried him from non-league football to England's biggest club. Competition for places was fierce. Andy Cole. Dwight Yorke. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. For outstanding forwards. Only two could usually start. For many players, that would have created frustration. Sheringham embraced it. He knew football wasn't only won by pace. It was won by movement, timing, decision-making. He linked attacks, created space, brought others into the game. The quality supporters had admired at Millwall, Tottenham, and with England, were beginning to win over Old Trafford too. Then came the 1998-99 season. A season that would change football history. Manchester United chased something no English club had ever achieved. The Premier League, the FA Cup, the UEFA Champions League. 3 trophies. 1 dream. Every player would have a part to play. Sheringham's moment was coming. First, the FA Cup final against Newcastle United. The pressure was enormous. Wembley expected Manchester United to deliver. Sheringham opened the scoring. Once again, when the occasion demanded composure, he provided it. Manchester United lifted the FA Cup. 2 trophies secured. 1 still to play for. Then, Barcelona. The UEFA Champions League final. Bayern Munich led for almost the entire match. Time was running out. The treble was slipping away. Sheringham came off the bench. Added time. David Beckham delivered the corner. Ryan Giggs' shot was deflected. Sheringham reacted first. Goal. The crowd erupted. Manchester United were level. But Teddy Sheringham wasn't finished. Just moments later, another Beckham corner. Teddy flicked the ball into the danger area. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer stretched and scored. Football history had been written. 1 goal, 1 assist. In the biggest club match in world football, the man many had labelled too old had become the hero of the greatest comeback the game had ever seen. Sometimes, experience doesn't slow you down. Sometimes, it makes you unstoppable. The treble was complete. Premier League champions, FA Cup winners, champions of Europe, and Teddy Sheringham had played a decisive role in all 3. Supporters now sang, "Oh Teddy, Teddy, he came to Man United and he won the lot." Sir Alex Ferguson had seen something others hadn't. Football intelligence, big game mentality, the ability to deliver when everything was on the line. Sheringham's greatest individual recognition was still to come. In 2001, at 35 years of age, he was voted PFA Players' Player of the Year. His fellow professionals believed he had been the best player in England. He also won the Football Writers' Footballer of the Year award. Think about that for a moment. At an age when many strikers had already retired, or accepted a place on the bench, Teddy Sheringham was officially the finest player in English football. Not because he ran faster, not because he jumped higher, because he thought quicker. Football's smartest striker had proved, once again, that intelligence never grows old. Eventually, Manchester United began planning for the future. Sheringham's contract came to an end. He left Old Trafford with every major honour in club football. The critics had been silenced. The supporters had embraced him. Most believed that would be the perfect ending. Teddy Sheringham had other ideas. Because even at 35, he wasn't finished. In fact, some of football's biggest bargains were still to come. Most footballers would have retired on a high. A treble, the Premier League, the Champions League, personal awards, a place in Manchester United history. For Teddy Sheringham, it was simply time for the next challenge. He returned to Tottenham Hotspur, not for millions, not as football's biggest signing, on a free transfer. For the second time in his career, Tottenham had acquired one of England's finest forwards for remarkable value. Supporters welcomed back a familiar face, and Teddy repaid that faith in the only way he knew: goals, leadership, intelligence. The years had taken away a little pace, but they hadn't touched the quality of his football brain. Then came Portsmouth. Another free transfer. Another club searching for experience. Another club that quickly realized they had signed far more than a veteran striker. Sheringham scored important goals, led by example, raised standards around him. Young players watched everything he did, how he trained, how he moved, how he thought. Managers understood something supporters had known for years. Teddy Sheringham made everyone around him better. In 2004, another move. West Ham United. Again, without a transfer fee. By now, many wondered how much he had left. Teddy answered exactly as he always had. On the pitch, he helped West Ham earn promotion back to the Premier League. Then, against the odds, helped them reach the 2006 FA Cup final. The match is remembered as one of the greatest finals ever played. Although West Ham fell short on penalties, Sheringham scored. At 39 years of age, most players were long retired. Teddy Sheringham was still delivering on English football's biggest stages. Then came one final chapter. Colchester United. He was now in his 40s. 42 years old. Still playing professional football. Still finding space. Still creating chances. Still showing that intelligence can never be replaced. His legs no longer carried him as quickly. His football brain never slowed down. His England career deserves to be remembered with equal admiration. 51 appearances. 11 international goals. A key figure during Euro 96. Especially against the Netherlands. 1 goal. 2 assists. One of England's finest performances in tournament football. While others grabbed the headlines, Teddy Sheringham quietly made the entire team better. Perhaps that sums up his whole career. When people talk about Teddy Sheringham, they often begin with the treble, the Champions League final, Barcelona, and rightly so. But those moments don't explain why supporters across England still speak so highly of him. Millwall supporters appreciated him. Tottenham supporters appreciated him. Manchester United supporters appreciated him. Portsmouth supporters appreciated him. West Ham supporters appreciated him. Even Colchester United supporters recognized they were watching someone special. Different clubs. Different generations. Exactly the same conclusion. Football often measured Teddy Sheringham by the wrong things. His age. His pace. His transfer fee. Supporters measured him differently. They measured him by the goals he scored, the chances he created, the trophies he helped win, the standards he set, the memories he left behind. Teddy Sheringham never became football's most expensive striker. He never chased headlines. He never needed a record-breaking transfer. Because everywhere he went, he made teams better. He made players around him better. He made supporters believe. Football looked at Teddy Sheringham and saw value. Supporters looked at Teddy Sheringham and saw class. Because while football measured value in millions, supporters measured it in memories. And what Teddy Sheringham brought was priceless. That's why Teddy Sheringham will always be remembered as football's smartest striker and a true footballing icon. Football can make you a hero in a single moment. It can also break your heart in an instant. Most players never truly recover from crushing disappointment. A lost title, a lost final, a missed opportunity. For some, it's enough to define an entire career. Ballack experienced heartbreak more than almost any footballer of his generation. measured by the trophies you lift. Sometimes, it's measured by the strength to keep fighting when everyone else would have given up. This is the story of the captain who never stopped fighting. Michael Ballack was born on the 26th of September, 1976, in Görlitz, East Germany. Growing up behind the Iron Curtain shaped more than just his childhood. It shaped his mentality, discipline, commitment, responsibility. Long before he became Germany's captain, those qualities were already part of who he was. Football wasn't simply about talent. It was about earning everything. His professional career began with Chemnitzer FC. Even as a teenager, coaches recognized something different. Ballack possessed the complete midfield game. Strong in the tackle, comfortable on the ball, dominant in the air, capable of scoring spectacular goals. But perhaps his greatest quality was his willingness to take responsibility. He wanted the ball when others hid from it. Even then, leadership came naturally. In 1997, he joined Kaiserslautern. The club had just been promoted to the Bundesliga. Almost everyone expected them to battle relegation. Instead, they shocked Germany. Against all odds, Kaiserslautern won the Bundesliga title. One of the greatest underdog stories in football history. For Ballack, it was the first glimpse of what success felt like. But it also taught him something else. Football never stands still. Every achievement simply becomes the next challenge. Those performances earned him a move to Bayer Leverkusen. Here, Michael Ballack evolved from an outstanding midfielder into one of Europe's finest. He wasn't a defensive midfielder. He wasn't an attacking midfielder. He was everything. Driving forward with power, winning crucial headers, scoring from distance, creating chances, leading by example. Supporters admired his determination. Teammates followed his example. Opponents struggled to stop him. Ballack wasn't simply playing football. He was controlling it. Then came a season that promised immortality. Leverkusen were chasing history. The Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal, the UEFA Champions League. 3 competitions. 3 opportunities to become legends. Instead, football delivered its cruelest lesson. Leverkusen narrowly lost the Bundesliga title. They were beaten in the German Cup final. Then came the Champions League final against Real Madrid. Ballack gave everything. But Real Madrid lifted the trophy. Within weeks, a dream season had become one of football's greatest heartbreaks. Most players would have needed months to recover. Michael Ballack didn't have that luxury. The World Cup had already arrived. Germany traveled to Japan and South Korea without being among the favorites. Yet game after game, their captain-in-waiting inspired them. Ballack wasn't just scoring goals. He was dragging Germany forward, leading every press, winning every battle, demanding more from everyone around him. Then came the semi-final against South Korea. With the match hanging in the balance, Michael Ballack stepped up once again. He scored the winning goal. Germany were through to the World Cup final. His teammates celebrated. The nation celebrated. Ballack smiled. But deep down, he already knew the price. The yellow card he received meant he would miss the biggest match of his life. He had carried Germany to a World Cup final, only to watch it from the stands. Brazil won. The dream was over. Think about that for a moment. In just a few weeks, Michael Ballack had lost the Bundesliga, lost the German Cup, lost the Champions League, missed the World Cup final through suspension, and watched his country lose. 4 crushing blows. Enough to break almost anyone. For Michael Ballack, they became fuel. Because the measure of a leader isn't how high he stands when everything is going well. It's how quickly he rises after life knocks him down. And Michael Ballack was about to rise again. 4 crushing disappointments. 1 unforgettable year. Most footballers would have carried those scars forever. Michael Ballack carried something else. Determination. He refused to let heartbreak define him. Instead, he used it as motivation. Following the 2002 World Cup, Germany's biggest club came calling. Bayern Munich. The expectations were enormous. Supporters expected trophies. Nothing less. Ballack arrived carrying the weight of everything that had happened at Bayer Leverkusen. But he never hid from pressure. He embraced it. Because the greatest leaders don't run away from responsibility. They search for it. At Bayern Munich, success returned. Bundesliga titles. German cups. Domestic doubles. Ballack quickly became the heartbeat of one of Europe's biggest clubs. He wasn't just winning matches. He was controlling them. Towering headers. Powerful runs from midfield. Thunderous strikes from distance. Perfectly timed passes. He could influence a game in almost every possible way. Managers loved his versatility. Teammates trusted his leadership. Supporters admired his relentless desire to win. Then came another responsibility. The captain's armband for Germany. Replacing Oliver Kahn was never going to be easy. But Ballack wasn't trying to imitate anyone. He led in his own way. Calm. Demanding. Fearless. He expected the highest standards. Because he demanded them from himself first. His teammates followed. Not because they had to. Because they believed in him. The 2006 World Cup arrived on home soil. Germany dared to dream. Every stadium was alive. Every match carried expectation. Ballack led by example throughout the tournament. Driving the team forward. Winning battles in midfield. Inspiring belief. Germany reached the semi-finals. Only Italy stood between them and another World Cup final. Extra time. Just minutes remaining. Italy struck twice. Germany's dream was over. Another heartbreaking defeat. Most people focused on the result. Michael Ballack focused on the future. Because leaders don't stay on the floor for long. 2 years later. Another opportunity. UEFA Euro 2008. Germany were back. Once again. Their captain stood at the center of everything. Ballack produced outstanding performances throughout the tournament. His leadership. His experience. His determination. Dragged Germany into another major final. Spain awaited. One of the greatest international sides football has ever seen. Germany fell short. Another runners-up medal. Another painful walk past the trophy. Another moment that could have broken lesser players. But not Michael Ballack. Club football brought another challenge. In 2006, he joined Chelsea. Some questioned whether he could adapt to the Premier League. He answered quickly. Strength. Technique. Goals. Leadership. He became one of Chelsea's most influential midfielders. Winning the FA Cup. The League Cup. Helping Chelsea challenge on every front. Yet once again, football tested him. The 2008 UEFA Champions League final. Chelsea against Manchester United. An English final. Another chance to lift Europe's greatest prize. The match went all the way to penalties. John Terry slipped. Manchester United triumphed. Ballack stood on the losing side once more. For many players, that would have been enough. Enough disappointment. Enough heartbreak. Enough reasons to stop believing. Michael Ballack believed anyway. Because he understood something that every great captain eventually learns. You cannot control every result. You cannot rewrite every final. You cannot guarantee every trophy. But you can control your character. Your effort. Your response. And every time football tested Michael Ballack, he answered exactly the same way. By getting back up. Again. And again. And again. His greatest battle was never against the opponent standing in front of him. It was against disappointment itself. And that battle was far from over. Football has a habit of remembering the final score. Who lifted the trophy? Who stood on the podium? Who celebrated beneath the confetti? It doesn't always remember the journey. Michael Ballack's story deserves to be remembered for far more than the medals that slipped away. Because every time football challenged him, he answered. Every single time. Following years of success with Chelsea, Ballack returned home. Back to Bayer Leverkusen. the club where he'd experienced both the greatest highs and the deepest heartbreaks. Some questioned the decision. They wondered whether his best years had passed. Michael Ballack wasn't trying to prove people wrong anymore. He simply wanted to play football, to lead, to compete, to give everything he still had. That had always been enough for him. Even as injuries became more frequent, his influence never disappeared. Young players looked to him for guidance. Supporters still admired the determination that had defined his career from the very beginning. He wasn't the loudest captain. He didn't need to be. His standards spoke for him. The way he trained, the way he competed, the way he accepted responsibility. Leadership isn't always about shouting. Sometimes, it's about setting the example everyone else wants to follow. There was one final heartbreak. The 2010 World Cup. Germany arrived with genuine belief. Ballack was expected to captain his country once again. Then, disaster struck. An ankle injury ruled him out before the tournament even began. For a player who had sacrificed so much for Germany, it was another cruel blow. Watching from the sidelines had become an all too familiar feeling. But this time, he refused to make the story about himself. Instead, he supported the next generation. Germany reached the semi-finals. The future had arrived. And Michael Ballack accepted it with the same dignity that had defined his entire career. In 2012, after more than 2 decades as a professional, Michael Ballack announced his retirement. He walked away having won league titles, domestic cups, countless individual honors, 98 caps for Germany, 42 international goals from midfield. A remarkable achievement for a player who spent his career doing everything: defending, creating, scoring, leading. Few midfielders have ever been so complete. So why is Michael Ballack remembered by some as football's greatest nearly man? Perhaps because football loves simple stories. It's easier to count the finals he lost than the people he inspired. It's easier to remember the medals he didn't lift than the courage it took to keep chasing them. Michael Ballack could have let 2002 define him. He didn't. He could have let the 2006 World Cup semi-final define him. He didn't. He could have let Moscow in 2008 define him. He didn't. Every setback became another reason to keep believing, another reason to keep leading, another reason to keep fighting. That is what made Michael Ballack special. Not perfection. Persistence. Football eventually teaches every player the same lesson. You cannot win every final. You cannot lift every trophy. Even the greatest players leave the game with regrets. But character is something no opponent can ever take from you. Michael Ballack's character never wavered. Whether he was lifting silverware with Bayern Munich, leading Chelsea into another title race, or wearing the captain's armband for Germany, he gave absolutely everything. Week after week, season after season. Perhaps Michael Ballack wasn't football's greatest nearly man after all. Perhaps he was football's greatest example of resilience. A captain who refused to let disappointment define him. A leader who stood back up every single time football knocked him down. Because trophies tell part of the story, character tells the rest. And Michael Ballack's character was extraordinary. History will always remember the finals, the near misses, the heartbreak. But those who watched Michael Ballack every week will remember something even greater. A complete midfielder, a fearless leader, a relentless competitor, a footballer who never stopped believing. And that is why Michael Ballack will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Some strikers score tap-ins. Others score spectacular goals. Very few can do absolutely everything. They can beat you with pace, beat you in the air, beat you with power, beat you with intelligence, finish with either foot, score from outside the box, or punish the smallest mistake inside it. Andriy Shevchenko did all of it. He wasn't simply one of the best strikers of his generation. He was one of the most complete centre-forwards football has ever seen. Once he saw the goal, he never panicked. He never rushed. He simply picked his spot. And finished. Clinical. Relentless. Deadly. That's why defenders feared him. Because when Andriy Shevchenko got a chance, they already knew what was coming. This is the story of football's ice-cold assassin. Andriy Shevchenko was born on the 29th of September, 1976, in Sheringham, just outside Kiev. Growing up in Ukraine during a time of enormous change wasn't easy. Football became both an escape and a dream. From an early age, he stood out. Not because he was bigger than everyone else, or stronger, but because he always seemed to arrive exactly where the ball was going to be. Great strikers don't just react. They anticipate. Even as a young boy, Shevchenko possessed that priceless instinct. He joined the famous Dynamo Kiev Academy, one of Europe's greatest football schools. This wasn't simply a place to develop talent. It demanded perfection. Training was relentless. Fitness levels were extraordinary. Every movement was analyzed. Every mistake corrected. The legendary Valery Lobanovsky believed football could be mastered through discipline and intelligence. His players became machines. Strong. Fit. Organized. Shevchenko absorbed everything. But he added something no coach can teach. The instinct of a natural goalscorer. Breaking into Dynamo Kiev's first team wasn't easy. Competition was fierce. Yet once Shevchenko arrived, he stayed. Season after season, his reputation grew. League titles followed. Goals became routine. Defenders discovered there wasn't one obvious way to stop him. Stand too close, and he'd spin in behind. Drop too deep, and he'd shoot from distance. Show him onto his weaker foot. He didn't really have one. Every decision carried a risk. Against Shevchenko, there were very few right answers. Then came the night Europe would never forget. November 1997. The UEFA Champions League. Camp Nou. Barcelona. One of the greatest stadiums in world football. Dynamo Kiev arrived as underdogs. Barcelona expected to win. Instead, they witnessed the performance that changed everything. Andriy Shevchenko scored a magnificent hat-trick. Not against an ordinary defense. Against Barcelona. Away from home. On one of football's biggest stages. Europe finally realized. This wasn't simply another talented young striker. This was someone capable of becoming the best in the world. The assassin had announced himself. The goals kept coming. Season after season. Competition after competition. His movement became almost impossible to predict. His first touch was immaculate. His acceleration explosive. His finishing merciless. He could score the spectacular. He could score the simple. It didn't matter. They all counted the same. Managers across Europe wanted him. Supporters dreamed of signing him. Defenders hoped they wouldn't have to face him. By 1999, the biggest clubs in Europe were competing for his signature. Everyone knew he was ready for the next step. The only question was, where? The answer was AC Milan. The home of Bercy, Maldini, Costa Curta, one of the greatest defensive clubs football had ever known. Ironically, they had just signed the striker capable of tormenting the very defenders they had built their reputation upon. Italy was the ultimate test. Serie A was widely regarded as the toughest league in the world for a striker. Every defender was tactically brilliant. Every chance had to be earned. Many world-class forwards had struggled. Some had failed completely. Could the young Ukrainian conquer the hardest league in football? Or had Andriy Shevchenko finally found opponents? Who could stop him? Football was about to find out. In 1999, Andriy Shevchenko arrived in Italy. For most strikers, Serie A was football's ultimate test. This was the league of Paolo Maldini, Alessandro Nesta, Fabio Cannavaro, Ciro Ferrara, Walter Samuel, some of the greatest defenders the game has ever seen. Space was almost impossible to find. Mistakes were punished instantly. Goals were precious. Many world-class forwards struggled to adapt. Some never did. Shevchenko needed just one season. From the moment he pulled on the famous red and black shirt of AC Milan, he looked at home. His movement was effortless. His timing impeccable. His finishing unstoppable. Week after week, Italy's best defenders found themselves asking the same question. How do you stop him? Get too tight. He'd spin in behind. Stand off. He'd strike from distance. Force him wide. He'd still find the corner. He wasn't predictable. He was complete. His debut season was extraordinary. 24 Serie A goals. The league's top scorer. In his very first year. Think about that. A striker arriving from Ukraine, walking into the toughest defensive league in the world, and immediately becoming its most feared goalscorer. It wasn't just impressive. It was almost unheard of. Supporters quickly fell in love with him. Not because he shouted the loudest. Not because he demanded attention. Because every week, he delivered. Goals against Juventus. Goals against Inter. Goals against Roma. Goals in Europe. When Milan needed someone to decide the biggest matches, they looked towards Shevchenko. More often than not, he delivered. His partnership with Milan's world-class players elevated the club once again. Andrea Pirlo's vision, Clarence Seedorf's creativity, Gennaro Gattuso's determination, Carcare's brilliance. Together they formed one of Europe's finest teams. At the very front stood the man every defender feared. One chance. One finish. Goal. Then came the 2002-03 season. The UEFA Champions League. Every round brought another challenge. Every round. Shevchenko answered. Milan reached the final against Juventus. An all-Italian showdown. 90 minutes couldn't separate them. Neither could extra time. It came down to penalties. The pressure couldn't have been greater. Thousands inside the ground held their breath. Millions watched around the world. Andriy Shevchenko stepped forward. Calm. Focused. Composed. He struck the winning penalty. AC Milan were champions of Europe once again. When the biggest moment arrived, the ice-cold assassin never flinched. Some players dream about deciding Champions League finals. Shevchenko actually did it. A year later, football rewarded him once again. The Ballon d'Or, the greatest individual honor in the sport. He had reached the summit, officially recognized as Europe's best footballer. Not through tricks, not through headlines, not through controversy, through goals. Relentless, clinical, match-winning goals. By now, defenders already knew exactly what Shevchenko wanted to do. The frightening part? They still couldn't stop him. Because great strikers don't just score goals. They create doubt. Every defender hesitated. Every goalkeeper second-guessed themselves. Every mistake became an opportunity. And Andriy Shevchenko rarely wasted opportunities. He had conquered Ukraine. He had conquered Italy. He had conquered Europe. There was only one challenge left. Could football's ice-cold assassin conquer England? After conquering Italy, there was only one major challenge left. England. In 2006, Andriy Shevchenko joined Chelsea, one of the biggest transfers in world football. Expectations couldn't have been higher. The Ballon d'Or winner, a Champions League winner, one of Europe's most feared strikers. Supporters expected goals. Lots of them. But football doesn't always follow the script. English football presented a different challenge. The pace was relentless. The physical battles never stopped. Injuries interrupted his rhythm. Confidence became harder to find. The goals still came, but not with the same regularity that had made him a legend in Milan. For the first time in years, the ice-cold assassin looked human. Many players allowed difficult moments to define them. Shevchenko never did. He remained the same professional, the same teammate, the same relentless worker. Because true greatness isn't measured only by your finest seasons. It's measured by how you carry yourself when things don't go your way. Eventually, he returned home. Back to Dynamo Kiev, the club where everything had begun. Supporters welcomed back more than a footballer. They welcomed home a hero. Although his pace had faded, his instinct never disappeared. The goals continued. Young players learned from one of the game's greatest centre-forwards. His experience became just as valuable as his finishing. His international career deserves its own chapter. For Ukraine, Andriy Shevchenko wasn't simply their captain. He was their symbol, their inspiration, their greatest footballer. Time and again, he carried the hopes of an entire nation. No moment captured that better than the 2006 FIFA World Cup. Ukraine were appearing at the tournament for the very first time as an independent nation. Many expected them to struggle. Instead, they reached the quarter-finals. Shevchenko led from the front, scoring important goals, leading by example, showing the world that Ukraine belonged on football's biggest stage. For millions back home, he wasn't just a striker. He was a national hero. When his playing career finally came to an end, his influence on Ukrainian football didn't. He stepped into management, determined to pass on everything he had learned. The standards, the professionalism, the belief. He wanted future generations to dream just as he once had. So, what made Andriy Shevchenko so special? Was it the goals? Hundreds of them. The trophies? League titles? The Champions League? The Ballon d'Or? Or was it something deeper? He could beat defenders with pace. He could outjump them in the air. He could finish with his left foot, his right foot, from outside the box, inside the 6-yard area, one-on-one. First time, second time. However the opportunity arrived, Andriy Shevchenko almost always found the answer. Complete strikers are rare. Strikers who master every part of the game are even rarer. Football has produced many great goal scorers. Ronaldo, Van Nistelrooy, Batistuta, Henry, Shearer. But Andriy Shevchenko earned his place alongside every one of them. Not because he scored the most goals, because he could score every type of goal. That made him almost impossible to defend. Perhaps that's why defenders respected him so much. They knew exactly what he was capable of. They studied his movement. They prepared for his runs. They analyzed his finishing. It rarely mattered. When Andriy Shevchenko found space, the outcome often felt inevitable. Football will always remember the great goal scorers, but only a select few become the complete striker every young forward wants to emulate. Andriy Shevchenko was one of those players. Clinical, powerful, intelligent, relentless. A striker who could beat you in every possible way. That's why Andriy Shevchenko will always be remembered as football's ice-cold assassin, and above all, a true footballing icon. Some footballers play to entertain. Some play to inspire. Some simply play to win. And then, there are the rare few, who refuse to accept defeat. No matter the score, no matter the opponent, no matter the stage. For Sergio Ramos, losing was never an option. He would score, tackle, fight, lead, sacrifice. Whatever his team needed, he was prepared to do it. To some, he was a hero. To others, the villain. But to every teammate who ever shared a dressing room with him, he was the captain you wanted beside you when everything was on the line. Because great captains don't just wear the armband. They change the belief of everyone around them. This is the story of the captain who refused to lose. Sergio Ramos was born on the 30th of March, 1986, in Camas, just outside Seville, Spain. Football was everywhere. From the moment he kicked a ball, his competitive nature stood out. Winning wasn't something he learned. It was part of who he was. Even as a child, he hated losing. Whether it was training, a small-sided game, or a family kickabout, every match mattered. Every challenge mattered. Every victory mattered. His talent quickly earned him a place in Sevilla's academy, one of Spain's finest footballing schools. There, his ability became impossible to ignore. Strong, athletic, fearless, comfortable on the ball, aggressive in the tackle, and remarkably composed for someone so young. Although naturally a defender, he already possessed something unusual, an instinct for goal. He attacked set pieces as if he were a striker. It was a sign of things to come. At just 17 years old, Ramos made his first team debut for Sevilla. Most young defenders take time to settle. Ramos played with the confidence of a veteran. He never looked intimidated, never hid from responsibility, never waited for someone else to lead. Every performance seemed to carry the same message: I'm ready. Supporters loved his commitment. His teammates trusted him. Spain's biggest clubs started paying attention. Then came the call that changed everything. Real Madrid, one of the biggest clubs in world football. A club where expectations crush careers. A club where good isn't good enough. At just 19 years old, Real Madrid invested around €27 million to bring Sergio Ramos to the Santiago Bernabeu. At the time, it was one of the highest fees ever paid for a teenage defender. The pressure was immense. The spotlight relentless. Every mistake would be analyzed. Every performance judged. Many young players would have been overwhelmed. Sergio Ramos wasn't. He embraced it. Replacing established stars at Real Madrid is never easy. Winning over the supporters is even harder. But Ramos didn't ask for patience. He earned respect. Week after week. Season after season. Throwing himself into tackles. Blocking shots. Winning headers. Driving forward with the ball. Even in those early years, there were signs he wasn't an ordinary centre-back. He wanted to influence matches, not simply survive them. As his game evolved, so did his reputation. He became faster, stronger, smarter, capable of playing at right-back or centre-back, equally comfortable defending world-class forwards, or starting attacks himself. Then came another remarkable quality. Goals. Important goals. Big goals. Goals that changed seasons. It wasn't normal. Defenders weren't supposed to decide the biggest matches. Sergio Ramos never cared what defenders were supposed to do. He did what his team needed. Real Madrid were building another generation. Iker Casillas, Pepe, Marcelo, Xabi Alonso. Some of the finest footballers in the world. Among them, Sergio Ramos became something different. Not simply another star. A leader. A player who never disappeared when the pressure arrived. If anything, the bigger the occasion, the stronger he became. He wasn't just preparing to become one of the world's greatest defenders. He was preparing to become the heartbeat of Real Madrid. Every great captain faces a moment when leadership becomes more important than talent. For Sergio Ramos, that moment was coming, and it would define not only his career, but the history of Real Madrid itself. Because sometimes, one player can change an entire football club's destiny, and Sergio Ramos was about to do exactly that. Every great captain eventually faces a moment when defeat feels inevitable. For Sergio Ramos, that moment arrived on the biggest stage in club football, the UEFA Champions League final. Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Lisbon. Real Madrid had spent years chasing one dream: La Decima, their 10th European Cup, the trophy every supporter craved, the one every player carried on their shoulders. But with seconds remaining, the dream was slipping away. Atletico Madrid led 1-0. The clock showed 90 minutes. Then 91. Then 92. Hope was fading. Around the stadium, people had already accepted defeat. Sergio Ramos hadn't. One final corner. One final opportunity. Luka Modric stood over the ball. He delivered. Ramos attacked it. Higher than everyone else. One perfect header. One unforgettable moment. Goal. 93rd minute. Football history changed forever. Real Madrid survived. Extra time followed. Madrid won 4-1. La Decima was finally theirs. When Real Madrid needed one player to refuse defeat, Sergio Ramos answered. That goal didn't simply win a trophy. It changed a football club. The pressure of La Decima disappeared. Confidence exploded. Real Madrid entered one of the greatest eras any club has ever experienced. 4 Champions League titles in 5 seasons. An achievement few thought possible. At the center of it all stood Sergio Ramos. Leading, organizing, competing, refusing to accept second best. By now, he wasn't simply one of the world's finest defenders. He was Real Madrid's captain. The armband suited him perfectly, not because he was the loudest, but because actions speak louder than words. He threw himself into every challenge, blocked shots others wouldn't attempt, played through pain, and when the biggest matches arrived, he demanded the responsibility. Great captains don't ask others to lead. They lead first. His influence stretched far beyond club football. With Spain, he became part of one of the greatest international teams the sport has ever seen. UEFA Euro 2008. Champions. FIFA World Cup 2010. Champions. UEFA Euro 2012. Champions again. 3 major tournaments. 3 trophies. An era of complete dominance. Alongside legends such as Iker Casillas, Xavi, Andrés Iniesta, Carles Puyol and Gerard Piqué, Ramos became one of the foundations upon which that dynasty was built. Yet what made him truly different wasn't only his defending, it was his timing. When Real Madrid needed a goal, Ramos often scored it. Towering headers, powerful finishes, last-minute equalizers, pressure penalties. He finished his career with well over 100 goals, an astonishing total for a defender, because Sergio Ramos never believed defending was enough. If his team needed more, he gave more. There was another quality his teammates admired: courage. No matter how big the occasion, he never hid. Champions League finals, El Clásicos, World Cup knockout matches, title deciders. He wanted the pressure, because pressure creates moments. And Sergio Ramos built an entire career around unforgettable moments. By now, supporters around the world recognized something unusual. This wasn't just one of football's greatest defenders. This was one of football's greatest leaders. A captain who inspired belief simply by being on the pitch. But that same mentality would also make him one of football's most controversial figures. Because refusing to lose sometimes comes at a price. Winning comes at a price. For some players, it's pressure. For others, it's expectation. For Sergio Ramos, it was controversy. No defender divided opinion quite like him. Some admired his passion. Others questioned his methods. Red cards, fierce tackles, heated confrontations, endless debates. To some, he crossed the line. To his teammates, he was doing whatever it took to win. That was Sergio Ramos. He never apologized for competing. Throughout his career, he became one of the most decorated defenders football has ever seen. 5 La Liga titles, 4 UEFA Champions League trophies, 2 Copa del Rey titles, 4 FIFA Club World Cups, 3 UEFA Super Cups, a World Cup, 2 European Championships, more than 180 appearances for Spain, over 100 career goals. Numbers that few defenders in history can match. But statistics only tell part of the story. The goals mattered. Not just because there were so many, because of when they arrived. Last-minute equalizers, cup finals, title races, Champions League nights. When everything was on the line, Sergio Ramos always believed there was still time. That belief spread through every team he played for. One player's mentality became an entire club's identity. Eventually, after 16 unforgettable years, his Real Madrid journey came to an end. Supporters said goodbye to more than a defender. They said goodbye to a captain. A leader, a symbol of one of the greatest eras in the club's history. His departure marked the end of a generation that had dominated Europe. A new challenge followed. Paris Saint-Germain. Injuries made life difficult. The opportunities weren't as frequent. But his influence inside the dressing room remained. Young players listened. Experienced teammates respected him. Leadership doesn't disappear when your pace fades. It comes from experience, from standards, from example. Then came one final homecoming. Sevilla, the club where it had all begun. Nearly 2 decades after leaving, Sergio Ramos returned. The teenager who had once dreamed of becoming a professional came back as a World Cup winner, a European champion, a multiple Champions League winner, and one of the most recognizable defenders football has ever produced. Sometimes, football writes the perfect ending. So, how should history remember Sergio Ramos? As one of football's most controversial players? Perhaps. As the defender with the most red cards? That's certainly part of his story. But reducing Sergio Ramos to controversy ignores everything else he achieved. Football isn't played by perfect people. It's played by competitors. And few competitors wanted victory more than Sergio Ramos. He inspired teammates, delivered in football's biggest moments, scored goals that changed history, lifted trophies almost every player dreams of winning, and wore the captain's armband exactly as a captain should, by leading from the front. The greatest captains aren't remembered because they were flawless. They're remembered because they refused to disappear when everything was against them. Sergio Ramos never hid. Not after mistakes. Not after criticism. Not after defeat. He faced every challenge head-on. That resilience became his greatest strength. Perhaps that's why Real Madrid supporters still sing his name. Not because he never made mistakes. Because when everything depended on one player, they knew exactly who they wanted. Sergio Ramos. The captain. The leader. The competitor. The footballer who simply refused to accept defeat. Football has produced many great defenders. Some were elegant. Some were uncompromising. Some were brilliant organizers. Sergio Ramos was all of those things. But above everything else, he was a winner. A captain whose mentality transformed teams. A leader whose belief changed matches. A footballer who refused to lose. And that's why Sergio Ramos will always be remembered as the captain who refused to lose. A true footballing icon. Some footballers overwhelm you with power. Others leave you speechless with speed. Robert Pirès did something different. He made football look effortless. Every touch seemed perfectly weighted. Every pass perfectly timed. Every dribble calm. Every finish composed. While others forced the game, Pirès simply flowed with it. It was as though he always had more time than everyone else on the pitch. Defenders chased him. Supporters admired him. Teammates trusted him. Because football always looked easier when Robert Pirès had the ball. This is the story of football's most elegant winger. Robert Emmanuel Pirès was born on the 29th of October, 1973, in Reims, France. His love of football came naturally. His father, Antonio, had emigrated from Portugal and introduced him to the game at a young age. Those Portuguese influences, combined with French flair, helped shape a footballer unlike almost any other. Technique before power. Intelligence before speed. Elegance above everything else. His professional career began with FC Metz. Even as a teenager, there was something different about him. He never looked rushed. He never wasted possession. Pirès wasn't interested in spectacular tricks. He wanted control. Every movement had purpose. Every touch created space. Every decision made the game simpler. Managers quickly realized they weren't coaching an ordinary winger. They were developing one of France's brightest talents. Success soon followed. Pirès helped Metz win the Coupe de la Ligue. His performances attracted attention from across France. Then, one of the country's biggest clubs came calling. Olympique de Marseille. The pressure immediately increased. The expectations grew. Pirès responded exactly as he always did. Quietly, confidently, elegantly, week after week. He became one of Ligue 1's finest attacking players. While his club career flourished, another opportunity arrived. France, the reigning world champions. Breaking into that squad wasn't easy. Competition was extraordinary. Zinedine Zidane, Didier Deschamps, Yuri Djorkaeff, Thierry Henry, David Trezeguet. Yet Robert Pirès earned his place. Not through noise. Through quality. His intelligence. His movement. His creativity. He gave France another dimension. Then came UEFA Euro 2000. One of the greatest international teams football has ever produced. Pirès became one of its most important players. His balance, his vision, his ability to drift inside, created problems defenders couldn't solve. Then, the final. France against Italy. With time running out, Pirès produced one of the defining moments of the tournament. He burst into the penalty area. Before delivering the perfect pass for Sylvain Wiltord to score a dramatic equalizer. France survived. Extra time followed. David Trezeguet scored the famous golden goal. France were champions of Europe. Pirès had helped change history. Europe was watching. And one manager in particular already knew exactly what he wanted. That manager was Arsène Wenger. He believed Robert Pirès possessed everything needed to succeed in English football. Vision, technique, intelligence, composure. In the summer of 2000, Arsenal made their move. Many questioned whether such an elegant footballer could cope with the pace and physicality of the Premier League. Could style really overcome strength? Could grace survive in England's toughest league? Robert Pirès was about to answer every single doubt. When Robert Pirès arrived in England, many believed the Premier League would change him. They thought the tackles would be too hard, the pace too fast, the defenders too physical. They expected him to struggle. Instead, Robert Pirès changed the Premier League. His first season wasn't straightforward. Everything felt different. The tempo, the intensity, the physical battles. Then came another setback. A serious knee injury threatened to derail everything. Many players never return the same after injuries like that. Robert Pirès returned. Even better. The 2001-02 season became unforgettable. Arsenal were magnificent. Patrick Vieira controlled midfield. Dennis Bergkamp created magic. Thierry Henry terrified defenders. And on the left wing, Robert Pirès glided past opponents with breathtaking ease. He wasn't simply beating defenders. He was making them look ordinary. One touch, one turn, one perfectly timed pass, or one composed finish. Everything looked effortless. That season, Arsenal won both the Premier League and the FA Cup. The famous double. Pirès was one of the team's outstanding performers. He wasn't the loudest player. He didn't demand headlines. Yet week after week, he produced moments of pure quality. Supporters adored him. His teammates trusted him. His manager couldn't have been happier. Arsène Wenger later described Pirès as one of the most intelligent footballers he had ever coached. Few compliments carried more weight. Then came the Invincibles. The 2003-04 season. 38 league matches. Not one defeat. One of football's greatest achievements. Robert Pirès played a huge part. His understanding with Ashley Cole down the left became one of the Premier League's finest partnerships. Cole would overlap. Pirès would drift inside. Defenders didn't know who to follow. Leave Pirès. He'd score. Close him down. He'd find Henry. Track Henry. Pirès would appear in space. It wasn't just talent. It was intelligence. During Arsenal's unbeaten campaign, Pirès reached another remarkable level. He scored goals, created chances, controlled matches. He finished the season with outstanding numbers, proving he wasn't simply a creator. He was a match winner. His calm finishing became almost as famous as his dribbling. One-on-one with the goalkeeper, he rarely looked rushed. He simply picked his corner and passed the ball into the net. Perhaps that was what made him so special. Everything appeared easy. Football isn't easy. The Premier League certainly wasn't. Yet Robert Pirès made the hardest things look beautifully simple. That is the mark of true elegance. His partnership with Thierry Henry became legendary. The two Frenchmen understood each other almost instinctively. One movement, one glance, one pass. The rest happened naturally. Their combination produced countless unforgettable goals. They didn't just play together. They thought the game the same way. For Arsenal supporters, watching Henry and Pirès attack was like watching art in motion. By now, Robert Pirès had achieved almost everything. A World Cup winner, a European champion, 2 times Premier League winner, 3 times FA Cup winner, an invincible, one of the finest wingers in world football. Yet there was still another chapter to write, because football's most elegant winger was about to leave North London. But elegance never goes out of style. Football often celebrates power, pace, strength, aggression. Robert Pirès proved there was another way. He didn't need to overpower defenders. He outthought them. By the time they realized what he was about to do, he'd already done it. That was his greatest gift. In 2006, after 6 unforgettable years, Robert Pirès left Arsenal. Supporters were heartbroken. He had become one of the defining faces of Arsène Wenger's revolution. A World Cup winner, a European champion, a double winner, an invincible. One of the finest foreign players ever to grace the Premier League. His legacy at Arsenal was already secure. His next destination was Spain, Villarreal. Many wondered whether his best years were behind him. Robert Pirès answered the only way he ever knew: by playing football. His experience became invaluable. His touch remained immaculate. His vision never faded. Even as the game became faster, his mind stayed one step ahead. Because football intelligence doesn't disappear with age. If anything, it becomes even more valuable. At Villarreal, he helped the club compete with Spain's biggest sides. Young players learned from him. Supporters admired him. Managers trusted him. His role had changed. He wasn't simply entertaining anymore. He was guiding, leading, teaching. The elegance was still there. Only now, it came with wisdom. Eventually, his remarkable career came to an end. But the memories never faded. World Cup winner, European champion, 2 Premier League titles, 3 FA Cups, an invincible, more than 100 goals at club level, countless assists, and thousands of moments that reminded us football could still be beautiful. So, what made Robert Pirès different? Was it his dribbling, his passing, his finishing, his trophies? Perhaps. But there was something even greater. He made difficult football look simple. He never rushed, never forced the spectacular. He always chose the right option. Sometimes, the simplest pass. Sometimes, the perfect finish. Sometimes, just one touch to eliminate a defender. That intelligence separated him from almost everyone else. Ask Arsenal supporters about Robert Pirès, and they'll smile. Not because he scored the most goals, not because he shouted the loudest, but because watching him play felt effortless. Every touch had purpose. Every movement had grace. Every performance reminded us that football isn't only about winning. It's also about how you play the game. Arsène Wenger once built a team that became known as the Invincibles. A team filled with remarkable footballers. Patrick Vieira, Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry Henry, Sol Campbell, Ashley Cole. Among those legends, Robert Pirès never looked out of place. He belonged. Because true elegance never disappears under pressure. It shines even brighter. Perhaps that's why so many former defenders speak about him with such admiration. He rarely embarrassed them with tricks. He embarrassed them with decisions. He always seemed to know what they were going to do before they did. That is football intelligence at its highest level. And very few players have ever possessed it like Robert Pirès. Football has produced many great wingers. Some thrilled us with speed. Some amazed us with skill. Some overwhelmed us with power. Robert Pirès gave us something different. He gave us elegance. A footballer who played with intelligence, creativity, and effortless quality. That's why Robert Pirès will always be remembered as football's most elegant winger. And above all, a true footballing icon. Some footballers dream of success. Others spend their careers chasing it. Samuel Eto'o expected it. Wherever he played, he believed his team should win. Not next season. Not one day. Now, he wasn't the tallest striker. He wasn't the strongest. But he possessed something every great champion needs. Belief. Relentless belief. The belief that no defender could stop him. The belief that no challenge was too great. The belief that every trophy was there to be won. Because Samuel Eto'o didn't just score goals. He built winning teams. This is the story of Built to Win. Samuel Eto'o was born on the 10th of March, 1981, in Douala, Cameroon. Like countless young boys across Africa, he dreamed of playing football at the very highest level. Resources were limited. Opportunities were rare. But his determination was limitless. Even as a child, he played with incredible confidence. He wanted the ball. He wanted responsibility. And most of all, he wanted to win. His extraordinary talent soon attracted attention far beyond Cameroon. As a teenager, he traveled to Europe. The dream had become reality. Real Madrid believed they had discovered one of football's brightest young prospects. Joining one of the world's biggest clubs should have been the beginning. Instead, it became his greatest challenge. Breaking into a squad filled with world-class stars proved almost impossible. Loan spells followed. Leganés, Espanyol, Mallorca. Many young players would have accepted life on the bench at Real Madrid. Samuel Eto'o refused. Because he didn't want to wear the biggest badge. He wanted to play. He wanted to compete. He wanted to win. His permanent move to Mallorca changed everything. For the first time, he felt trusted. The responsibility suited him perfectly. His explosive pace terrified defenders. His movement never stopped. His finishing became sharper with every season. Supporters quickly realized they weren't watching an ordinary striker. They were watching a future superstar. Then came history. The 2002-03 Copa del Rey. Mallorca reached the final. Standing in their way. Recreativo. Samuel Eto'o delivered when it mattered most. Mallorca lifted the first major trophy in their history. For a club that had never experienced success on that scale, it was unforgettable. For Eto'o, it confirmed something he had always believed. Winning wasn't luck. Winning was a habit. His performances made him impossible to ignore. Goals arrived season after season. He became Mallorca's all-time leading goalscorer in La Liga. One of the greatest players the club had ever seen. Ironically, the club that had let him leave was forced to watch him become one of Spain's deadliest forwards. Real Madrid had missed their chance. Someone else wouldn't. In the summer of 2004, Barcelona came calling. A club rebuilding under Frank Rijkaard. A young Ronaldinho was already dazzling supporters. New ambitions were growing. Barcelona needed a striker. Not simply someone who could score. Someone obsessed with winning. Samuel Eto'o was exactly that player. The move carried extra emotion. Eto'o had something to prove. Not just to Barcelona. To Real Madrid. The club that never truly believed in him. Every Clásico became personal. Every goal against Madrid meant something more. He wasn't driven by revenge. He was driven by proving his worth. And there is no motivation quite as powerful as proving the doubters wrong. Barcelona had signed an outstanding striker. What they didn't yet realize was that they had also signed a born winner. The trophies. were only just beginning. When Samuel Eto'o arrived at Barcelona, he wasn't joining the finished product. He was helping build one. Barcelona had talent. Ronaldinho, Xavi, Andrés Iniesta, Carles Puyol, a young Lionel Messi beginning to emerge. But talent alone doesn't guarantee trophies. You need footballers who hate losing. Samuel Eto'o hated losing. From his very first season, he transformed Barcelona's attack. His pace stretched defenses. His movement created space. His finishing punished mistakes. Defenders couldn't simply concentrate on Ronaldinho anymore. Now, they had another nightmare to deal with. A striker who never stopped running, never stopped pressing, never stopped believing the next chance would be his. Goals quickly became routine. Week after week, Eto'o delivered. League titles followed. Supporters embraced him. His teammates trusted him. Managers admired his relentless work ethic. Because unlike many elite goalscorers, Eto'o worked just as hard without the ball as he did with it. He chased defenders, pressed goalkeepers, won possession, then sprinted into the penalty area to score. He demanded everything from himself, and expected the same from everyone around him. Then came Paris, the 2006 UEFA Champions League final. Barcelona faced Arsenal. For much of the night, it looked as though Arsenal would hold on. Time was running out. Barcelona needed someone to change the game. Samuel Eto'o stepped forward. His equalizer shifted the momentum. Minutes later, Juliano Belletti completed the comeback. Barcelona were champions of Europe. When the biggest stage arrived, Eto'o delivered once again. Champions don't fear pressure. They embrace it. Success never changed him. If anything, it made him even hungrier. Season after season, the goals continued. The trophies continued. The standards never dropped. Then, in 2008, Barcelona appointed a young manager, Pep Guardiola. Many questioned the decision. Could someone so inexperienced lead one of the world's biggest clubs? Eto'o didn't ask questions. He focused on winning. The 2008-09 season became one of football's greatest campaigns. Barcelona played breathtaking football. Quick passing, relentless movement, total control. At the heart of their attack stood Samuel Eto'o. He scored goals, created chances, led the press, worked tirelessly for the team. Then came another Champions League final. Manchester United, the reigning European champions. The world watched as two footballing giants collided. It took just 10 minutes, and Samuel Eto'o struck. His goal gave Barcelona the perfect start. They never looked back. Barcelona won 2-0. Another Champions League. Another league title. Another Copa del Rey. The first treble in Spanish football history. Samuel Eto'o had once again helped build a winning team. Many players would have stayed forever. Comfortable. Successful. Admired. Samuel Eto'o wasn't interested in comfort. Football had another challenge waiting. Jose Mourinho wanted him at Inter Milan. A new country. A new league. A new system. A new test. Some questioned whether he could adapt again. Samuel Eto'o simply smiled. Because winners don't fear new challenges. They welcome them. The striker who had conquered Spain was about to try and conquer Italy. By the summer of 2009, Samuel Eto'o had nothing left to prove in Spain. 3 La Liga titles, 2 Champions Leagues, a treble, hundreds of goals. He had become one of Barcelona's greatest strikers. Yet, another challenge called Inter Milan. Jose Mourinho. Italy. Most footballers would have stayed where they were comfortable. Samuel Eto'o never chased comfort. He chased success. Moving to Inter meant changing everything. A different country. A different style of football. A different role. Under Jose Mourinho, Eto'o wasn't always asked to be the team's main goalscorer. Sometimes, he played out wide. Sometimes, he tracked fullbacks. Sometimes, he sacrificed his own statistics for the good of the team. Many superstars wouldn't have accepted that. Samuel Eto'o did. Because there was something he valued more than goals. Winning. The 2009-10 season became another masterpiece. Inter won Serie A. Inter won the Coppa Italia. Then came Madrid. The UEFA Champions League final. Standing in their way. Bayern Munich. Inter were magnificent. Diego Milito scored twice. The final whistle blew. Inter were champions of Europe. For Samuel Eto'o, history had been made. Back-to-back trebles. With two different clubs. A feat almost impossible to imagine. He hadn't simply conquered Spain. Now, he had conquered Italy too. His willingness to sacrifice for the team earned enormous respect. Jose Mourinho trusted him completely. Not because he scored the most goals. Because he would do whatever the team required. That is the mark of a true champion. Talent wins matches. Selflessness wins dressing rooms. Samuel Eto'o possessed both. His international career was equally remarkable. For Cameroon, he wasn't simply the captain. He was the face of African football. An Olympic gold medalist. A two-time Africa Cup of Nations winner. Cameroon's all-time leading goalscorer. Four-time African Footballer of the Year. Generation after generation looked up to him. He showed millions of young footballers across Africa that they could reach the very top of the game. His influence stretched far beyond the football pitch. As his career continued, he embraced new adventures. Russia, England, Italy once again, Turkey, Qatar. Wherever he went, he brought experience, leadership, professionalism, and the same relentless desire to compete. Because winners don't suddenly stop being winners. It's part of who they are. So, what made Samuel Eto'o different? Was it his pace? His finishing? His movement? His trophies? Perhaps. But there was something even greater. He never believed any task was beneath him. Need a goal? He'd score it. Need someone to defend? He'd do it. Need someone to press for 90 minutes? He'd lead the press. Need someone to inspire the dressing room? He'd be that player too. Samuel Eto'o never asked, "What's best for me?" He always asked, "What's best for the team?" That mentality built champions. Football has seen countless brilliant strikers. Players who scored incredible goals. Players who thrilled supporters. Samuel Eto'o did all of that. But he also made every team stronger. Mallorca believed they could win. Barcelona conquered Europe. Inter completed one of football's greatest seasons. Cameroon inspired a continent. Wherever Samuel Eto'o went, success followed. Perhaps that's why his legacy reaches far beyond the goals he scored. He proved that greatness isn't only measured by talent. It's measured by sacrifice, leadership, commitment, and an obsession with winning. Football has produced many extraordinary strikers. Some were natural finishers. Some were incredible athletes. Some became global superstars. Samuel Eto'o became something even rarer. A footballer who made every club he joined believe they could become champions. Because he was built to win. And that's why Samuel Eto'o will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Football gave Paul Gascoigne everything. Fame, glory, the love of a nation. But it asked for everything in return. Blood, sweat, and tears. Some footballers are remembered for the trophies they won. Others, for the records they broke. Paul Gascoigne is remembered for something far rarer. The way he made people feel. He could make an entire stadium laugh. Leave world-class defenders standing still. Then, moments later, bring a nation to tears. There has never been another footballer quite like Gazza. And perhaps, there never will be again. Paul Gascoigne was born on the 27th of May, 1967, in Gateshead, England. Life wasn't always easy. Money was tight. Opportunities were limited. But one thing never changed. Paul Gascoigne always had a football at his feet. From the moment he started playing. His talent was impossible to ignore. He wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the strongest. He simply saw the game differently. While others looked for the obvious pass, Gazza saw possibilities nobody else could imagine. Newcastle United soon recognized what they had. Their academy was producing a footballer unlike any they had seen before. He wasn't interested in playing safe. He wanted to entertain, to take risks, to try the impossible. Sometimes it didn't work. He'd smile and try it again. That fearless approach became his trademark. Football wasn't a job. It was pure joy, and everyone watching could feel it. His first team debut arrived in 1985. Even as a teenager, he played with astonishing confidence. Senior professionals didn't intimidate him. Big crowds didn't frighten him. Pressure simply didn't seem to exist. Week after week, supporters filled St. James' Park to watch one young man. Paul Gascoigne wasn't just Newcastle's future. Many believed he was England's. The biggest clubs quickly came calling. In 1988, Tottenham Hotspur won the race for his signature. The transfer made headlines across the country. England's brightest young talent was heading to London. The expectations were enormous. Gazza never looked bothered. He simply carried on playing the only way he knew. With freedom. With imagination. With a smile on his face. White Hart Lane became his stage. Supporters couldn't believe what they were watching. Defenders were twisted inside out. Impossible passes somehow found their target. Long-range strikes exploded into the top corner. Every match felt as though something extraordinary might happen. Because when Paul Gascoigne received the ball, anything was possible. Then came the 1990 FIFA World Cup. England travelled to Italy with hope. Few imagined what was about to happen. Gazza became the heartbeat of Bobby Robson's side. Fearless. Creative. Inspirational. He wasn't simply England's best player. He became the player the entire tournament wanted to watch. Against Belgium, his brilliance shone. Against Cameroon, he inspired England once again. With every match, his legend grew. Then came Turin, the semi-final. West Germany. 99 minutes that would define a generation. During the match, Gazza lunged into a challenge. The yellow card came out. Instantly, he knew. If England reached the World Cup final, he would miss it. The cameras captured everything. The tears. The heartbreak. The raw emotion. Millions watching around the world saw a footballer whose love for his country meant everything. It wasn't weakness. It was passion. The image became one of the most iconic moments in football history. England eventually lost on penalties. The dream was over. But something extraordinary had happened. Paul Gascoigne had become more than England's best footballer. He had become the nation's favourite son. He returned home a hero. The whole country had fallen in love with Gazza. Not because he was perfect. Because he was real. He laughed. He cried. He played football with a freedom that reminded people why they fell in love with the game in the first place. Everything seemed possible. The world was at his feet. Nobody could have imagined that the greatest moments of Paul Gascoigne's career were still to come. By 1990, Paul Gascoigne wasn't just England's favourite footballer. He was one of the biggest stars in world football. The biggest clubs wanted him. Supporters adored him. Children copied him. Every time he stepped onto a football pitch, people expected magic. And more often than not, Gazza delivered. Then, disaster struck. The 1991 FA Cup final. Tottenham against Nottingham Forest. Just 15 minutes into the match, Gazza flew into a challenge. It was fearless. It was committed. It was Paul Gascoigne. But this time, it came at a terrible cost. He suffered a devastating knee injury. One of the brightest stars in football was suddenly facing the biggest battle of his career. Blood, sweat, and now, pain. Many wondered whether he'd ever return to the same level. Paul Gascoigne answered the only way he knew. By fighting. Month after month. He worked his way back. The road was long. Frustrating. Relentless. But giving up was never an option. Eventually, he arrived in Rome. Ready to begin again. Life in Italy wasn't always easy. A new language, a new culture, a different style of football. Yet Gazza's personality shone through. Supporters loved him, not just for his ability, but for his humor, his honesty, his humanity. He entertained people on and off the pitch. At Lazio, he reminded everyone that football should still be fun. Then came another new chapter. Rangers. Some questioned the move. Paul Gascoigne answered those doubts almost immediately. He became the heartbeat of Walter Smith's side, scoring goals, creating chances, dominating matches, playing with the same fearless freedom that had made England fall in love with him. Only now, he had added maturity to his brilliance. The trophies returned. Scottish Premiership titles, Scottish Cups, League Cups, individual awards. Supporters idolized him. He wasn't simply winning matches. He was producing moments people would never forget. Long-range strikes, defenses left chasing shadows, moments of outrageous skill. The smile was back. So was the genius. Then came UEFA Euro 1996. England hosted the tournament. Expectation filled the country. Once again, everyone looked towards Gazza. Against Scotland, he produced one of the greatest goals in England's history. With one delicate flick, he lifted the ball over Colin Hendry. Before it touched the ground, he unleashed a stunning volley beyond Andy Gorham. A goal of imagination, technique, confidence, pure genius. Then came the celebration. The famous dentist's chair. A moment that perfectly captured Paul Gascoigne. Brilliant, funny, completely unforgettable. England reached another semi-final. The nation dared to dream once more. Yet again, penalties brought heartbreak. But despite the disappointment, Gazza had reminded the world exactly who he was. One of football's greatest entertainers. A player capable of producing moments that live forever. There were footballers with more medals. Footballers who scored more goals. Footballers who enjoyed longer careers. Very few ever possessed Paul Gascoigne's natural gift. He didn't just play football. He expressed himself through it. Every touch carried imagination. Every pass carried courage. Every match carried possibility. But football's greatest battles aren't always played on the pitch. And for Paul Gascoigne, the hardest challenge of all was still to come. Football can be beautiful. It can also be cruel. For Paul Gascoigne, it was both. After the highs of Rangers came new chapters. Middlesbrough, Everton, Burnley, then adventures in China and beyond. The brilliance never completely disappeared. Every now and then, Gazza would still produce a pass, a touch, or a moment that reminded everyone exactly who he was. The genius was always there, even when the years had begun to catch him. Away from football, life became more difficult. The battles were no longer against defenders. They were against himself. His struggles with alcohol, his mental health, and the intense pressure of fame became painfully public. For supporters who had watched him light up football grounds, it was heartbreaking, because they weren't just watching a former player. They were watching someone they genuinely cared about. Paul Gascoigne had never pretended to be perfect. Perhaps that's why so many people felt such a deep connection to him. Yet through every setback, the love never disappeared. Walk into almost any football stadium in England, mention the name Gazza, and you'll still see people smile. Talk to former teammates, and they'll tell you about his generosity, his humor, his kindness. Talk to opponents, and they'll tell you how impossible he was to stop. Very few footballers have ever been loved quite like Paul Gascoigne. Look back at his career, and the achievements are remarkable. An FA Cup winner, Scottish League champion, Scottish Cup winner, Scottish League Cup winner, PFA Young Player of the Year, PFA Players Player of the Year. Over 50 caps for England. Goals that defined generations. Moments that became part of football history. Yet somehow, those achievements still don't fully explain Paul Gascoigne. Because Gazza wasn't measured by statistics. He was measured by memories. The tears in Turin. The goal against Scotland. The dentist's chair celebration. The outrageous passes. The fearless dribbles. The smile. Millions remember exactly where they were when they watched Paul Gascoigne play. Very few footballers leave that kind of mark. People often ask, what if? What if the injury in the 1991 FA Cup final had never happened? What if life away from football had been kinder? What if England had reached the 1990 World Cup final? What if? Maybe those questions can never be answered. But perhaps they don't need to be. Because greatness isn't always measured by perfection. Sometimes it's measured by the joy you bring to millions of people. And Paul Gascoigne brought joy unlike almost anyone else. He reminded us that football wasn't just about systems, or tactics, or statistics. It was about imagination, freedom, courage, the confidence to try something nobody else even saw. That was Gazza. Every time he stepped onto a football pitch, you believed something magical might happen. And very often, it did. Blood. For the sacrifices he made. Sweat. For every ounce of effort he gave. Tears. For the moments that united a nation. And for the battles he faced long after the final whistle. Those three words don't just describe Paul Gascoigne's career. They describe his life. Football has produced countless great players. Some won more trophies. Some scored more goals. Some enjoyed longer careers. But very few captured the hearts of a nation the way Paul Gascoigne did. Because Gazza wasn't just admired. He was loved. A once-in-a-generation football genius. A fearless entertainer. A player who reminded us why we fell in love with football in the first place. And that's why Paul Gascoigne will always be remembered as a true footballing icon. Before you go, I'd like to thank every single one of you who has liked, commented, shared, followed and subscribed to True Footballing Icons this week. Your support means the world and helps keep these legendary football stories alive. This week we've celebrated Teddy Sheringham, Michael Ballack, Andriy Shevchenko, Sergio Ramos, Robert Pirès, Samuel Eto'o and now Paul Gascoigne. 7 football icons, each remembered for something truly unique. One final question. Which player from this week's documentaries was your favorite? And who would you like to see featured next? Let us know in the comments below.